So, before we left last time on our little video here, so put this on somewhere in this neck of the woods. We had somebody who was inquiring about public versus private. So I sat here for a few minutes while my phone was recharging, and I went ahead and I laid it all out. And this is all just off the top of my head. I didn't go back through my books and all my other notes. This is just stuff that's ingrained in my brain at this point. And I'm going to do my best to try and help you guys understand the difference between public and private. So let's start out with the public side, because it'll be the easiest for you to recognize, and then we'll traverse over to the private side. On the public, you have persons, corporations, individuals, partnerships, LLCs, public trusts, contracts, commerce, at law, in rem, okay? Family courts, Article 1 courts, Admiralty, Maritime, UCC, Uniform Commercial Code, USC, United States Code. You have the IRC, International Revenue Code. You have civil rights, political rights, Roman civil law, Roman civil maxims, Roman civil statutes, Roman common law, war powers, martial law, bankruptcy, mortgages, taxes, ordinances, rules, federal rules of civil procedure. On the public side, at law, you have auxiliary, concurrent, and exclusive. And under the Judicature Act, they mixed equity with the commercial side of things. Okay, so it's blended now, which was always strongly forbidden until the act, the 1879 or something like that, or 1789. It was 1871 Judicature Act or 1879 Judicature Act. Go look it up. Okay, again, this is just off the top of my head. But that's when they did the blending of the equity and public law. On the public side, you have what is called equitable by characteristic. Okay, so what would constitute equitable by characteristic? Writ of mandamus, writ of habeas corpus, writ of quo warranto. You see, the public side is very jealous of equity, the exclusive jurisdiction equity, so it mimics it. So that's what we call or identify as equitable by characteristic. That's on the legal side of things, okay? And that's at the public side, the Roman civil side, martial law side of things. Then you have legal, obviously in the public sector, which is the undoing of God's law. We have foreclosures, things. Things are always in rem, okay, at law. We have color of title, color of law, color of authority, simulated legal process, fiction. We have real estate and property, not land, is on the public side of the ledger. Okay, this is all about double bookkeeping entry, ladies and gentlemen. We have stealing, we have robbery, we have human trafficking, we have first-degree murder, second-degree murder, manslaughter. We have all these different things in the legal realm. Okay, and I'm just trying to articulate that to you so you can kind of get your idea of how tantalizingly tedious it is to go through all that garbage for 7 years of your life and retain all this shit that's really not necessary. So if I can save you from that, kudos to you. On the public side of the ledger, so we have the public side of the ledger, we have public banking, we have general accounts, and we have general deposits, okay? We have citizenship, birth, B-I-R-T-H and B-E-R-T-H. We have the U.S. Postal Service. We have the U.S. Postal Trademark Office. We have driver's license. We have lot, block, parcel ID numbers, address, and zone improvement project numbers, which is identified as a zip code, which is for military purposes. So you fall within their territories. See how tricky they are? You have easements. You have free mail delivery to your house. Okay, that's part of the public side. That's a benefit you're receiving. You have property taxes. On the public side, we have what are called voters. Okay, voters really don't matter, but they feel like there's something, they're part of something greater than themselves. But in reality, in case this last election didn't prove to you half-wits that voters don't fucking matter, I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, I should be nice because typically the listening nodding, it's pretty fucking sharp. Or I have no reason to believe that they're not. Colorable title, we have fiat, currency, debtors, social security numbers, birth certificates, traffic courts, family courts, acts as judges. Okay, they act as judges. They're really holding military tribunals, and they're pretending that you are a private in their military. And then we have what is called blind justice. This is all on the public side. Again, this is just out of the top of my head. Just trying to help you guys be able to see the difference between public and private. All right? So again, for those of you that were just joining, since the last video, I put all this down on paper to kind of help you guys out, understand the difference. So now let's go through the private side. The private side is beautiful. It's glorious. It's ordained by the Heavenly Father, okay? It's where your Constitution comes into play, okay? Or the Constitution. It's really not your Constitution. It's the Constitution. It doesn't offer you any rights. What it does is draw that nice line in the sand. So on the private side, we have auxiliary, concurrent, and the exclusive jurisdiction of equity, okay? And again, you notice that I mentioned those three very same things on the public side because the public side so often likes to emulate and simulate the private side. They're very, very jealous of the exclusive jurisdiction of equity. They're very, very jealous of the freedoms we actually have, and they do their damnedest to hide this from you, okay? You have 20 maxims of equity that on the private side, if you can remember these, they are so badass. Maxims are short, pithy sentences that need no proving at all. They've been challenged for thousands of years. They've never been overturned, and most of them hail directly from the Bible. There were certain things as man rewrote the Bible they were not allowed to take out. The Heavenly Father wasn't going to have it that way, and it's still there, all right? There's natural law and God's law on the private side. The 10 Commandments, private trust, land, actual ownership of land, okay? Unalienable rights. Now, earlier I mentioned civil rights, civil law, Roman civil statutes, political rights. All of those things are on the public side because man manifested that horse shit in their head. But if man giveth, man can also taketh or ignoreth, okay? Very poignant point I'm trying to make here. But unalienable rights touch every last one of us. Some of us know about our unalienable rights, and it gives the appearance to others that somehow we're above the law. But the law that we actually abide by is far superior to the public sector, okay? In the private side, you have to be very accountable, responsible, and really think things through because you're going to be held to a higher standard at the end of the day. If you're coming into the private side of a court system, you better be on your A game and being a straight shooter, all right? Because these people are gatekeepers. So you have private trust, land, unalienable rights. Again, everybody has the same unalienable rights. I don't have the right to come kick you in the shin, which means you don't have the right to come kick me in the shin. And if that should happen, the best way to stay out of the public sector is to remedy our issue or controversy in the private side, provide remedy first before it becomes a controversy. Because once it becomes a controversy, now it's in the public sector and in the public venue. You're both going to end up getting fleeced by the time it's all said and done because that's how they get this shit set up. And they have a right to do what they're doing. So on the private side, we have reality, We have grace, we have forgiveness, we have mercy, we have honor, dignity, respect, good faith, good reason, good conscience, sound doctrine, and sound principles, okay? Private property, equitable by nature, all right? What goes up must come down. That's equity by nature. Equitable by nature is also what should be done shall be done, right? Equity will not perfect an imperfect gift. That's equitable by nature. Equity will not aid a volunteer. That's equitable by nature. I could go on and on and on, but I won't. I'll digress. Let's see. We have legal by characteristic. Now that throws a lot of people off. People are like, well, why in the private side would we have legal by characteristic? And remember, it's not legal by nature, it's legal by characteristic. And that is so the bean counters, the people who are responsible for the double bookkeeping entries, can come across from the public side and enter into the private domain and settle the accounting. Well, who does the settling of the accounts? Most people don't realize this, but attorneys are brokers. They're brokering property. They're brokering ledgers is what they're doing. The common man sees it as, oh, this is my ruler. Well, the ruler has a bond attached to it, has a certificate. And that certificate is actually the value in the fictional realm. The ruler itself is, something that's going to decay. It's not an asset, it's a liability. Over time, I'm going to have to maintain it and upkeep it. Now, let's be realistic. I'm using the ruler as an example. Obviously, this ruler, is not depreciating in value. So long as I don't bang it up, it'll always give me a straight edge to draw a straight line. But like as far as houses and cars and things of that nature, when they're using colorable titles, they're actually stealing away from you your right to your property without fully disclosing it. And that's why these lawyers don't want you learning this stuff, because people like myself that are out here showing you guys the other side of the ledger are really bad for business. It's probably why they're pushing this COVID bullshit so fucking hard, is because too many people are waking up entirely too fast and they're going to have a mutiny on their hands. And I use the word mutiny because they like to play pirates and cowboys and thugs, and pretend that they're in the sea of commerce. So I call them like I see them, they're pirates, all right? Which piracy on land is a violation of Title 18, 1661. That is on the public side. All your titles and codes and statutes and city ordinances and rules and regulations, all on the public. So back to the private side here, we have sound doctrines and sound principles. Basically, keep your hands and your feet to yourself. Don't touch it if it doesn't belong to you. Does it sound pretty sound to you? It sounds pretty sound to me. We have private property on the private side. We have equitable by nature, legal by characteristic. We have remedy. We have man and woman are on the private side. Due process of law is on the private side. We have habeas corpus, mandamus, memorandums, quo warrantos, full accounting. Okay, the full accounting comes with the estate that was manifested. Remember, they have to have a yin and a yang, so the public and the private. It's the double bookkeeping entries that are happening, both public and private, that zero each other out in the middle. At the end of the day, the balance due must always be 0. Okay? 0 is the number that you want to hit. Due process of law, habeas corpus, mandamus, memorandums, quo warrantos, full accounting, name decree, status correction. We're going to go into some words on the private side that actually hold validity when you're bringing a claim. First off, everything can always be attributed to a theft, period. It's a theft of your time, it's a theft of your property, it's a theft of your rights, it's always a theft. We have extortion, we have kidnapping, we have assault, we have battery. Private side of the ledger, private banking, special accounts, special deposit, private American National Union State members. We have a place of nativity, not a birthplace. We have General Post Office, not a USPS, United States Postal Service. We have common law copyrights. We have the law common to us, to I. We have meets and bounds. We don't have lot, block, parcel ID number, zone improvement project number, and address. That puts us in a military foreign occupied zone. Okay. So the public side has the military occupied zone with the zip code and the territorial shit and the free rule delivery mail and all this other crap. Okay. But on the private side, we have a general post. We, as men, call for our mail. We call down there, and we go down and we pick it up. And a man or a woman on the other side of a door, without stepping through the commercial venue, comes out and hands us our mail. Or they even walk out the back door and hand it to us. That's general post. That's private side. Common law copyright, meets and bounds. On the private side, we have electors. And if you know anything about your history, electors are the ones who vote for actual people who run the fucking country, not voters. They don't give a shit about voters. They laugh at you guys. They think you're funnier than fuck. And not only that, by participating in their voting Ponzi scheme, their RICO racketeering scheme, you unknowingly and unwittingly contract yourself in to having the statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations be applied to you, because you volunteer to be participant in it, believing somehow that you're a Republican or a Democrat. And I want to remind you guys that being a Republican or a Democrat is actually an occupation. It's not a patriotic thing, okay? They got all these bumbling idiots running around going, I'm a Republican, I'm a Democrat. No, you're a fucking man who's kind of lost his mind, because Democrats and Republicans get a fucking paycheck, and you ain't got no fucking paycheck, so you are not in that occupation. You can't call yourself a Democrat or Republican because you're not. You might like some of the ideology and the rhetoric these people speak, but just know they're blowing smoke up your ass and planning on growing daisies out of your bum hole real soon. As soon as they get done vaxy, all you guys. All right? That's their plan, is to get rid of you. They don't like you. They don't have a need for you anymore. Let's be honest. They have technology that is 100 years advanced than what they've actually released to the public. They don't need a population as great as it is anymore. They don't fucking need it. Little point. All right. So on the private side, we have the private side of the ledger. We have private banking, special accounts, special deposits. Special accounts, the IRS cannot touch, okay? There's no garnishments out of special accounts. There is no, with special accounts, you're making special deposits. They don't commingle what you specially deposit into the account with public funds. These are non-interest bearing accounts, which means you reap no benefit from that deposit. They have to actually hold specifically what you put in there. They're not allowed to disseminate it, float it around in the public or anything like that. It's private, okay? And it's a special deposit, which means if I give you 6 Morgan silver dollar coins that all say 1921, I want to get all 6 of those coins back from you one of these days. It might be a month from now, it might be a week from now, but I want the exact same coins that I gave you, because I put them on special deposit, not general deposit. They're not for general funds and general purposes in the public. They're for a very special reason, and it's a special deposit, which means if you're going to hold them, you're a trustee, and I expect those same 6 fucking coins given back to me when I require it. So it's kind of like co-ops. Co-ops, they all the farmers grab all their grain from around the country and they put it in one big building. Now, some farmers' grain might have been drier and the other farmers might have been a little bit more wet. But if that farmer comes back to that co-op and says, hey, I want my grain, not Joe Blow from Kokomo's grain, well, it's an impossibility because they co-opt. It was a general deposit, not a special deposit. A special deposit is each farmer would have their own silo at Cargill, and they would say, okay, I want my grain. I want my grain because I believe my grain was better than what was growing down in the lower 40 of Frank's place, where it's swampy and wet, and when he harvested, I know it wasn't dry. I want my grain for my cattle. Now you're talking about a special deposit, and Cargill can now go to your special silo and get your special deposit out for you at your request. But see, so that's kind of the public and the private, the best way I can explain it to you off the top of my head. All right. So we covered special deposit, private American national, state, national, union, state member. Union of States was prior to obviously what we have now. So the Union States would have been identified like this: Nebraska, period. It wasn't state of Nebraska, and it wasn't Nebraska state. It was just Nebraska, okay? For all intents and purposes, it was his own country, and still is. It's still there, because people don't understand how to access it. Then we have what's called the state of Nebraska. State of Nebraska is not Nebraska. Dissimilar things should not be joined, and similar is not same. And the legislative bodies are very much aware of this shit. When you start reading legislation, you will see where they clearly show the distinction between the United States of America and the United States. And it's not a game. And where they spell state with a capital S and where they spell state with a lowercase s. Those are symbolisms that you need to be consciously aware of when you're reading legislative documents. And anything that's produced by the government has to have a government styles manual that goes with it that has all the definitions, what they mean, what the words mean when they're written in there, and in what form, context, style, if you will. And it's very important to read those things, because every last piece of legislation, anything the government does, has to have a government styles manual that goes with it. So when they're deliberating over this stuff, because they're manipulating people with the twisting of the language, which is unworthy of a judge, so it should naturally be unworthy of any politician, but far be it from me to, try and bring common sense back into what we've got going on. But I want you guys to be cognizant of that, because I struggled with that for a long time. But Mr. Anonymous, I don't get it. I mean, it says right here, and he goes, dude, you're comparing apples and oranges, brother. That's for the United States of America, and this is for the United States. That's two separate entities. And look here, Derek, where it says U.S. That's a different entity altogether. That's a different jurisdiction. That's a completely separate subject matter from the United States. When they abbreviate things, it doesn't necessarily mean what you think it means, and they do that intentionally to confuse you. So, full accounting, name decree, status correction, theft, extortion, kidnapping, assault, battery, private side of the ledger, private banking, special account, special deposit, private American national, union state member. You have a place of nativity that differs from your birthplace. You don't actually have a birthplace. Birth, B-I-R-T-H or B-E-R-T-H, is actually talking about birthing a ship, a citizenship, a relationship, a partnership. Everything in Admiralty Maritime always is a ship, a conservatorship, all this shit. It just blows my mind how it's so in our face, and yet we kind of are oblivious to it. We have the general post. I just went through that. You have the common law copyright, okay? You could create yourself a record after 90 days. You give them public notice to everybody. Everybody knows about it. You put it in the paper. You got a certificate of publication, and now you've affirmed your common law copyright. Meets and bounds, that's dealing with the land, ladies and gentlemen, not the fixtures on the land, but the actual landmass. And when I talk about meets and bounds, the meets and bounds go from the core of the earth all the way up, clear up into the atmosphere and the stratosphere and through the 7 layers. That is when you call forward and perfect a title. By doing a land patent, that's what you're doing. And you're invoking the Constitution, its protections, and the treaties, okay? These treaties do have power. They're still in force and effect. They haven't gone anywhere. Somebody was inquiring the other day, hey, Derek, why don't you talk about the Federalist Papers? They still have force, weight, and effect and authority. Yes, they do. Okay, and I acknowledge that. I just don't often talk about it because, well, honestly, I think it would go over most people's head. It's easier to talk about a subject that most people have conceptualized to some degree in high school and grade school, and that would be the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights. I try to stick with that because most people will stay in tune. You start talking about the Federalist Papers, and then many people have never even heard of them. which is kind of astonishing. But that is the reality of it. I mean, a lot of people haven't heard of the Magna Carta. Most people have never heard of the Unum Sanctum. Most people have never heard of the Sestake V Act of 1666. Most people have never heard of Justinian, who was a madman back in the 500s, you know. And I could go on and on and on for days and days and days about a lot of things that most people will never know of, but I'll digress. Let's finish up this video here. So we covered nativity, general posts, we have the common law copyright, we have metes and bounds, we have electors, we already covered that, we covered the land patent, we have perfect title on the private side, all right? Perfect title. 9/10 of the law is possession. The other 10th that nobody ever tells you about that finishes it is title. Not color of title, perfected title. And perfect title only exchanges between men and women with value and consideration, gold and silver coins. Gold and silver coins, ladies and gentlemen. In the commercial realm, value and consideration could be something like this. You trespass against I, but if you provide remedy in a certain amount of time, I will provide you forgiveness. That's remedy. That's remedy in the public sector, but it's also value and consideration because I give them a trespass. I give them a free reign of forgiveness, if you will, which is value and consideration on my end. So long as they provide the remedy. So in the commercial aspect of things, that's actually giving value and consideration. But in the private sector, on the private side, when dealing with title, the only way title passes from one man to another is with value and consideration. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is gold and silver. It's affirmed in Article 1, Section 10, the Nebraska Constitution. It's Article 1, Section 16. In all 50 state constitutions, it is there, it exists, and it is a rule. It is a rule of natural law. In order to pass title, value and consideration must be given, okay? The other thing is, on the private side, we must always acknowledge and accept, okay? Have you ever had somebody tell you, hey, it's rude for somebody to offer you a gift and you not accept it? I mean, I've been told that a number of times. Family's always trying to go, oh, here's a little bit of cash. And I don't need your money. And my uncle grabbed me by my ear going, hey, your grandma loves you. It's the only way she knows how to, say I love you, I miss you, and just you accept that because you're breaking her heart, or I'm going to break your ass when we go outside. So go back in the house and do the right thing and just say thank you and leave it at that. So that was an important lesson I had to learn in my life because I've never been raised that way as far as accepting things. I don't want anything because my thought process is if I accept something, then I'm expected to do something in return. And I'm really, really busy, so I don't have the time of doing that, which is selfish in itself, but I'll work on that later. My whole point to this is if I give you something, but you don't accept it, and somebody else comes in and says, hey, you using this? No. Mind if I do? Go ahead. It's abandoned property. You've got to accept and acknowledge it. You got to create your record. Your record on the private side doesn't have to be actually your physical record with all the information on it. Doesn't actually have to be published on the public side. What you do is you give a statement of fact and a notice of interest to said peculiar property, and you go ahead and you just put it on the public side so everybody can see. And then if there's ever a controversy that stems up about your private intellectual superior property or your physical property, you just simply say, hey, look, there's an NOI and a notice of interest and a statement of interest filed in the miscellaneous record on the public side, giving the public sector full knowledge of what I've got going on the private side. However, it's not detailed. It's just a general description of my notice of interest and statement of interest in said private property, okay? And I don't even like using the word private because it's putting an adjective before the noun, which diminishes the noun. Again, I dropped out of school at 13, so I'm learning all these things. You guys may already know it. And if you don't know it, now you do. So and one of the reasons that I have that thought process is when you read the preamble of the Constitution, it doesn't mention anything about private property. You don't see the word private property. You see the word property, and it is all by itself. So why diminish it with an adjective when it's very clear that property is how it needs to be addressed? If they wanted it to say private property, it would have said private property. They knew what was best. It should be property by itself, period. Let's see. Electors, land patents, perfect title. Real money. Real money, we just covered that. The actual definition of a dollar is a finite amount of gold or silver. That is the real definition of a dollar. There is no other definition for dollar, ladies and gentlemen. A Federal Reserve note is not a dollar. A Federal Reserve note is an instrument of debt. It may be an unbacked security, but it is definitely not a dollar, okay? A check is not a dollar. Negotiable instrument, perhaps, but it is not a dollar. It's also an instrument of debt. It's an IOU. It's not a dollar. A dollar is a finite amount of gold and silver. You find that and can affirm that. Congress authorized it. Article 1, Section 10 affirms it, and George Washington was the one who came up with the mathematical equation of what a dollar would weigh. So go look up those facts. That will help you out tremendously. Gold and silver coin. On the private side, we have the creditors. All right, the creditors are all on the private side. The creditors, the people, the men and women on the private side are tax exempt. The men and women on the private side are beneficiaries of the constructive and resulting trusts that happen in the public. Okay. Article 3 courts, they're on the private side, okay? Article 3, subsection 2, subpart 1 venues, where you have chancellors and magis. That's all on the private side. That's in camera, in chambers, ex parte, and sealed. Sealed from what? The public. The public doesn't get to know this stuff, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of people that refrain from teaching this stuff like I do out here in the open because they're afraid of being barred from teaching people the truth because the gatekeepers won't let them in because they don't like free-range slaves. They don't like people who figured this shit out, squawking and talking, because it's considered to be insurrectious behavior and sedition, because you might be the one match that lights the whole damn forest on fire and creates a mutiny on the public sector, all right? And because of that, a lot of the gatekeepers, with people like myself, say, you know what? You're intelligent, no doubt. You figured it out, but guess what? Fuck you, because you can't keep your mouth shut and you're going to piss off a bunch of people. And if you continue to persist on, you actually become a detriment to us protecting this public trust that we're charged with the duty of protecting. So we're just going to euthanize your stupid ass. That's eventually what happens to people like me. Look at JFK, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on and on. James Trafficant. I mean, they didn't waste any time getting rid of old Trafficant, who, by the way, was a Democrat. And I can say and affirm that he was a Democrat. You want to know why? He got a fucking paycheck for the occupation of being a Democrat. All right? So he was a Democrat. Anyway, they got rid of him real quick. Let's go tax exempt, Article 3 courts. Private, in camera, in chambers before a chancellor, a man highly learned in trust law and property law, not real estate, but property in the aspect of land, which is what your bundle of rights is actually tied to. From the soil you came to the soil you will return, and until you figure out that you need to join mind, body, spirit, and soul to be on the private side, you're going to screw yourself and drive yourself nuts. The symbolism of the birth certificate is they stole your soul. They stole your soul. All right? You ever notice when you go to jail, they don't ask you to take off your shoes so they can get some toe prints? They don't ask for toe prints. Just think about it for a minute. You want to know why? Because the Vatican already stole the soul and told them, you take that motherfucker's toe prints, you owe us for it. You don't take that guy's toe prints. We own his soul. You don't. We're the reaper of souls. You can fleece the man of his equity, his sweat energy, but you will not take his soul. We already have it. That's the symbolism there. A lot of it's symbolism. And if you don't believe me, go read your Bible, where it will clearly tell you that as the child comes out, they will bruise his cheek and prick his heel. You were warned. You were warned. I used to think lawyers only existed for like 800 years because the London Crown has pumped them out for 800 years out of a prestigious school. And then I started reading the Bible and go, holy shit. Woe unto ye lawyers, for ye laymen, grievous with burdens to be borne. And ye yourself not even touch them with one finger. And I go, well, the lawyering craft has been around a hell of a lot longer than 800 fucking years. I mean, if the Bible's talking about the lawyering craft and the ones who twist and manipulate language to steal from other people, all under the guise that they're administering justice, it's been around for a while. In fact, you start to think about it, it goes all the way back to the beginning of time when Lucifer was in the garden with Eden, sweet talking her, whispering sweet nothings into her ear, manipulating the language just so to get her to do what he wanted her to do. Open-eyed equity. Earlier I was talking about blind justice. In the public venue, they cannot hear you, they cannot see you, they do not look at the facts, they do not see evidence, they do not hear testimony, and none of that shit happens in the public side, all right? It's simulated legal process, remember that. It's simulated over there. And the private side is quite different. And the symbolism for that, by the way, on the public side, is the Lady Justice with the scale in one hand and the saber in the other and a blindfold on. That does not sound like a fun party to me. However, in the exclusive jurisdiction of equity, it is open-eyed equity. They can hear you, they can see the evidence, they can see the document. It disregards the form on the private side and looks at the intent and the substance versus the structure, versus on the public side, they go, oh, well, you don't meet our format. You gotta be a lawyer to be, in our sector, sir. You just don't quite get it. There's rules and structures really rigid. Like I told you guys, the common law is not, the Roman civil common law is not a fun place to be. And that's exactly what they operate in, is the Roman civil common law. And that's where they get all these rigid rules and regulations, and this is how it has to be, or our system won't process it. Well, guess what? In the private side, I can make a claim on a napkin, and they have to give me a docket number for it, or I'll nail their ass to the wall for not doing their job, from barring I, a man, from my redress of grievance to provide remedy and remove controversy. And if they bar me from that, it's obstruction of justice, denial of due process of law, along with a litany of other things. But the biggest thing it's an egregious trespass against my right to get remedy when a trespass has occurred. So they're trespassing on my claim. Brings me to the next point. On the private side, we have claims. On the public side, we have complaints. Complaints are effectively just people bitching. I don't want to hear you bitch. Don't come to me with complaining if you don't have 3 viable solutions. Don't bring your bullshit to me because I just don't have the time for it. However, if you're going to make a claim, you have my undivided attention, because you making a statement of fact saying that you have a claim tells me that you know a little more than most people. And I might just want to pay attention to what you're saying just a little bit closer. Because if you understand that men make claims in corporations, or trustees on behalf of principals and corporations on the public sector only can complain, why can they only complain? Because they don't truly have any firsthand knowledge. They're not a real party of interest. They have never been caused harm, damage, or loss. Okay, they're tasked with protecting their principal, which is a corporation, which man can't cause harm to a corporation. Why? Because corporations can write shit off on their taxes. Period. You can't harm a corporation. It either shows up as a positive or a tax write-off as a loss. There is no hurting the corporation. It's just craziness. So anyway, with that said, I hope that helps you to a degree understand public and private. All right, and that was just all off the top of my head while the phone was charging. My public and private list could probably be 8 to 10 sheets deep and long, but there it is for y'all. Public and private. All right. So, with that said, what else could we talk about here? Yeah, I think that about wraps it up for helping you guys understand the public and private. You want to be on the private side. It's not always about your paperwork, ladies and gentlemen. It's mainly about up here being able to finally make the transition in your head of who you are. Once you do that, I don't care who drags me into any building. It's pretty simple to assert my authority, knowing damn good and well who I am and what everything else is. It's like being visually impaired at some point in your life and finally having LASIK surgery on your eyes and you can just see clear as a bell. Everybody who works for a corporation who's trying to give you orders is nothing more than a trustee on behalf of the principal attempting to get you to do something under the guise they have the fucking authority to tell you what to do. And I'm going to tell you right now, ain't no man got any more rights than I have. If you're going to tell me what to do because you wear a badge and you think you're privy to being able to boss me around and lord over me, I'm going to bill your ass. Okay, I'll follow orders all day long. I'm not here to be an asshole about it. Shit, you want me to get on the ground? You bet I'm going to get on the ground. And tell you that me getting on the ground by your order while you obstruct me from going to point A to point B and holding me in a place that I don't wish to be held without any reasonable articulable suspicion or reasonable articulable fact that I've been engaged in a crime, about to commit a crime, or in the process of committing a crime, and I have to get on the ground on my hands and knees and soil my clothes to appease your egotistical ass, that motherfucker's going to build up $50,000 fucking dollars for that order. 50 G's. 50 fucking G's. And because he's ignorant of the law and he doesn't realize that he's supposed to be independently bonded, because he's at that point becomes a private mercenary contractor on behalf of his criminal syndicate organization who's involved in RICO racketeering schemes and artifice against the American people while engaged in mixed war, because he doesn't know to be independently bonded. Guess what? Probably gonna lose his car over that one, or his house, more than likely his wife. First thing it always goes when you end up in a financial debacle, the wife's always gone. It ain't no fun hanging around with a guy that can't do anything with you. I mean, that's just that's the law of nature. People want to do things. And once they find out you're a criminal, now morally they're starting to go, well, why the fuck am I with you? What kind of man am I really with? You're out there harming people all day? That's what you do? You're in the locker room talking about how you ruin people's lives? That's not the kind of trash I want to be with. So, unfortunately, it all starts to come to light. The good news is the American people, and furthermore the people of the world, are waking up to the atrocities under the guise that it's for your good, it's for your benefit. I mean, if we didn't have people out here just tasing and shooting people at random that are completely immune from prosecution, then, it would just be sheer and utter chaos. I think what we have now is sheer and utter chaos. It really is. I think, just sitting back and watching some of the rhetoric that goes on, you have to wonder if it's all scripted. There was this movie called, I think it was The Truman Show, where I think everything around him was literally scripted, and the man started to think he was going insane. Look at the news. Look what they can do. I mean, you hear the same rhetoric on every channel, and everybody's like, well, if you listen to CNN, you're a Democrat. If you listen to Fox News, you're a Republican. If you listen to this, and I started flipping through the channels, and they're all saying the same fucking shit. They're all saying the same stuff. It don't matter. They just put a different spin on it. So you think that it's a completely different ideology, but in reality, they're just guiding the masses to where they want to go. Here you go. This is where we want them to focus today. Focus. Forget about Epstein fucking up all these kids, and forget about all these wealthy tycoons who keep stealing over 800,000 American offspring every year. Don't pay attention to the fact that the governments of the world are the largest human traffickers and traffickers of persons, and yet they're the ones that seemingly created the rules and regulations for it and made it illegal, yet they participate in it and execute it all fucking day long. Anyway, that's the rant for tonight. Private versus public. Thanks for joining me. Share it with your friends and your family. God love you and Godspeed. And tomorrow we're going to have a phenomenal class on how to tell your boss that you're not going to take a vaccination. You're just not going to do it. And how you can get paid if they decide to terminate you because of your standpoint. So we'll talk to you soon.